Remember when certain games had the rare ability to make you feel like you were truly part of a group of adventurers, creating a deep sense of belonging and a unique fantasy? Storytelling in games isn't just an afterthought, it's the heartbeat that gives a game life.
Welcome to the Gentleland Show, where we talk about game development, design, and culture. It's your access to all things in the games industry. We're your guides.
Hey, I'm Jacky, founder of Gentleland, computer scientist and digital artist.
I'm Edwin, a composer, sound designer, and opera singer.
Hi everyone, I'm Sam, a business and marketing expert and a co-founder at Gentleland. Do you remember your earliest experience with storytelling in video games? My first video game was Super Mario Bros. On the Nintendo NES. It's like the first one. I didn't really understand storytelling there. You were just some guy that got big and got small and fell down a hole and got bullied by random enemies and animals and things. What's funny about that whole Super Mario franchise is when you get to Super Mario 2 on the Nintendo Entertainment System, it was a very confusing process. All of a sudden, you were not doing the same things you were doing in the first game. Now you were pulling up radishes and you could be the princess, and now there's this green person and there's this other person that looks like a mushroom. It was like super confusing. If anything, I really disliked Super Mario 2. When we got to Super Mario 3, all of a sudden, it was like back to Super Mario 1, but better. And so Super Mario 3 to me really was like Super Mario 1, the successor, the spiritual successor of Super Mario 1. I could tell now that there was a land. And the castles made sense, and the forts made sense, and the little hills made sense, and all the enemies made sense, and Bowser, and the flying ships. Everything in the design of Super Mario 3 was just awesome. Everything just made sense to me. It didn't really dawn on me how important storytelling was until I saw Super Mario 3, because it made Super Mario 1 make sense, because it told a story finally.
Oh, that's so interesting. I feel like as a game dev, I often find myself asking, what makes a game story truly unforgettable? Is it the fast-paced action, the stunning graphics, or just, like this rush of overcoming like a difficult challenge or something like that? And it's kind of storytelling in games that's so nice if it's not just an afterthought and it's, like more of the heartbeat of the game that gives everything life. What if a game could, just through storytelling almost unlock a memory you thought that was kind of long gone? And maybe you'd expect to hear, about a blockbuster or something, or, like a masterpiece. But sometimes I feel like here's a twist where it's like these really old games that were like when I was younger made with RPG Maker or something that had really beautiful stories, like To the Moon that was released in 2011, I believe. Was already a hidden gem back then, and it had like this very beautiful story about memory, and the gameplay was just so captivating. But in terms of graphics, it was an RPG Maker game. It was pixel art, right?
It was rinky-dink.
Yeah.
But that's one of the things that I love about a good story, because anybody who's good at making stories can make a game that has a good story. Even if you're the best 2D, 3D artist, modeler, animator in the world, you cannot make The Witcher 3 on your own. How big was the To the Moon team?
I actually don't know how big they were, but it was like back then it was one of these games that was tucked away on a CD that came with a magazine, back when you still had like actually hardware that you would put into your PC. Usually these CDs had demos, right? And To the Moon was one of these early games that I discovered. And it's one of these really unassuming games where you play it. And to me, it just introduced me to a lot of branching narratives. It was a concept that I didn't really understand back then. I don't think it was To the Moon that introduced me to that, but a slightly different game that was also made with the RPG Maker that I never found again, ever. There were so many of these small RPG Maker games that really introduced me to storytelling in games and what could be. And, sometimes I even wonder, who would have thought, my entire journey started with something so small and so unexpected?
Like a lot of old video games and properties in that era were like just riddled with crappy graphics because the technology was limited, and some of them had stories and some of them didn't have stories in them. But we see a lot of like modern video games and they're just leaning on graphics, leaning on AAA, leaning on like celebrity. Is storytelling dead?
Ooh, that's a powerful question. I don't think it's dead. But I do think game developers have to be quite careful with how they're telling their stories in games these days, especially AAA or just people with bigger budgets. Like you said, you can't just wrap a terrible story in glitter, amazing graphics and just expect it to work. Because ultimately what you're looking at there is entertainment, but it's very superficial. It's not profound. And whether people actually think they care about stories or not, it's the stories around a game that actually make that game mean something. It makes it mean anything to the person playing it. And I promise you, if a game's meaningless to you, whether it's consciously or subconsciously meaningful, if it's not meaningful to you, you're not going to play it. If it is meaningful to you, you'll keep coming back, you'll remember it, you'll buy into the franchise, the IP.
I feel like it's so easy to fall into this idea that storytelling is at risk of losing its soul, maybe. And there seems to be this troubling trend that's diluting narrative depth and complexity. Take Monkey Island, just for an example, as classic storytelling excellence. And we don't have that many games like this anymore.
Take Monkey Island as classic storytelling excellence is not a set of words that I thought I would ever hear. But can you imagine the severity of this problem? Like, this is a really problematic and concerning problem that makes me really scared sometimes. The fact that we're looking towards Monkey Island for like an example in like a good storytelling when like there's all these students just throwing infinite money at things, that's really concerning. Like, I'm terrified of this.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I bet there's a hidden story inside one of the most popular games that almost no one has ever discovered, almost like an Easter egg, if you will. And I personally like the scavenger hunt approach to storytelling in games. You may know it from games like Dark Souls or Valheim. I feel like it really gets you into the environment and the atmosphere of the game.
Exactly. I think that's such an important point because so many developers, like I see a lot of beginning developers who want to write a novel, but they're making a game. Your game's story doesn't have to be just a traditional linear plot from A to point B, and it doesn't have to read like a novel. It shouldn't read like a novel because if I wanted a novel, there's many excellent novels I can read instead of playing a game. So you can give this scavenger hunt approach. You can spread out a story. You can let players discover it. And I find that so entertaining. Like I remember some remote locations in games like Elder Scrolls, or actually I quite enjoyed in Guild Wars. Some areas were just very hard to get to, and they would just whack some kind of random lore there. And it felt actually special. The lore itself probably, I don't know, I really can't remember it in hindsight, but it just felt like I was in a special place because I'd found some random temple. And that also counts as storytelling. That is giving the game meaning and significance. It's giving a location significance and giving you a reason to be there and telling you this means something.
I feel like games with this like minimal or even abstract plot sometimes can tell the most powerful stories. So I'm like always thinking about games like Journey, where there's no dialogue at all. And these get me like really excited sometimes,
Yeah, there's also Ico and Shadow of the Colossus. They barely say anything. And yet, like, everybody remembers their stories. People find those very powerful games. They're just masterclasses in show, don't tell, which I think is a wonderful philosophy in general.
At first I thought, I was like, gamers, are we cooked? Are we just too stupid to really understand gaming or storytelling? From a game development standpoint, do people just not bother to put original stories into things? I think when you just look at the good stuff that's been made, I start to feel hope. I start to get really excited. Again, we talk about really old games, right? Like Sonic. Sonic is having kind of like a resurgence in its IP, its creative IP. There's like movies out. People are, Sonic is a great game. But when you started off being Sonic, you're like, okay, you're a hedgehog. What does a hedgehog do? Why does Sonic run fast? Why is he blue? And why does he need to run fast? Oh, because this evil Dr. Robotnik stole all the woodland creatures and you're a woodland creature. You're supposed to rescue all your friends and save the forest or whatever. And even something so simple as that drives home like saving your friends, environmentalism, the evil doctor, whatever, right? And then now you look at like more grandiose projects like the Final Fantasy VII remake. Final Fantasy VII started off with like this sweeping epic of a Final Fantasy space opera thing. It was not a space opera, but like people have really started to rediscover it and be like, oh, what is this story really about? We've got like these relaunches of franchises recently, Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, going deeper into Legend of Zelda lore. There's always these YouTube videos of where does this game fit into which part of the timeline and is it canonical or not? Now we have this new Legend of Zelda game, which is the real Legend of Zelda game where the Princess Zelda is Echoes of Wisdom is the protagonist. And you've also got like other things like Super Mario RPG Remake that's set up like a new game like Mario and Luigi Brothership, taking these old engines, adding new stories onto it. I'm really excited for kind of like this new era of storytelling in gaming.
Did you see the semi-official Nintendo post where they basically had agreed on a timeline for the Legend of Zelda series?
No, I didn't see that.
It exists now, and I don't think it really makes much more sense than just than the fan ones, but...
So they didn't just retcon themselves into oblivion? They actually gave some semblance of structure?
I think they retconned themselves and then justified it later.
I have to admit, I've never thought about the question why Sonic would be blue or something like that. Like for me, it's almost comforting to know that this way of storytelling, isn't lost. Today you can find similar narratives in Korean dramas almost, which I really like, like for the storytelling, to be honest. Maybe not similar to Sonic, but, you find storytelling in all types of ways in games. And I like to sometimes remember when certain games had this kind of like rare ability to make me or make you in general feel like you were truly part of a group, where it's like experiencing adventures together, creating like a deep sense of belonging and, like this unique fantasy almost, I want to say.
I think it's a wonderful feeling when you're playing a game, and a lot of online games really don't have that much of a sense of a story. Modern Warfare Warzone, plenty of people play it. They have no issues with... I don't think it has a plot, as far as I'm aware.
The plot is war.
Yeah, the plot is survive, maybe. But the significance, the plot line, if you like here, is actually you. You are the plot. You're trying to win a game and you're meeting friends, and that's giving a story around the game to everything you're doing. So the story doesn't even need to be in the game itself. It's actually, in these cases, I find it really interesting how the stories become situated in the person playing the game.
Yeah, you make a good point. One of my favorite kind of like fast food style games is Assassin's Creed, and like don't hate me because I just called it Assassin's Creed fast food, but I love it. I've almost played every game since the first one. It was great. I thought it was like a beautiful immersive historic world that you get to go, and there's a little bit of a storyline of like the animus and kind of going into your DNA memory of your ancestry, and you're an assassin. But like even the most recent ones like Assassin's Creed Mirage and Origins, like how much more of can you be dropping yourself back into the animus, right? Like, but what's cool about that particular storytelling mechanism is that it's made it episodic. You're like, oh, I get it. You've got DNA assassins. We get it. You vape. Like, what's new, right? But there's only so many times you can jump off a mosque into a pile of hay and then have eagle vision. Even though Assassin's Creed is walking, parkour, and stabbing simulator, you still want to know what is going on with that particular character. Yes, I would love to visit ancient Baghdad. I would love to visit ancient Egypt. It's fun to walk around Italy. Yes, it's entertainment. And yes, there's a story, but I think it's also interesting that like people will complain Assassin's Creed is devoid of story, but right, there's quite a lot of story. And it really depends on kind of like how you're engaging with this particular storyline for yourself. I find myself engaging my own story as I play these characters in Assassin's Creed.
Why do these stories matter so much to us? Is it because games at their best are about more than just fun? Like maybe they're about connection. I always feel like a well-told story can evoke empathy. It can challenge our perspectives. It can make us question our own choices. There's so much that a good story can do for us. I almost feel like the power of storytelling in games is that it allows us to step into someone else's shoes, to live the life that's different from our own, to be that Assassin's Creed step simulator person and to walk away kind of maybe changed. Maybe Assassin's Creed is the worst type of a game I could have taken for this analogy, but...
unless you're an assassin.
Well, you found me out. Ultimately, what makes storytelling in games so special, in my opinion, is its ability to create these personal connections and lasting impressions, making each experience uniquely memorable, I feel. It's exciting to think about how future games will continue to push all of these boundaries, not only, from a narrative side of things, but how they can enrich our whole experience in playing games. And with that, we wanted to explore storytelling in games, and we hope to talk more about it in one of our next episodes.
Let's talk about your favorite game stories at The Gentleland on X, TikTok, and Instagram. What's a story that stuck with you? Or do you have questions or comments about the show? You can also send us an email to podcast@gentleland.net. Finally, we're on Facebook and LinkedIn at Gentleland.
Okay, be sure to let us know what you think about today's episode. And if you're enjoying the show, please be sure to share it with your friends and family in the games industry. Thanks so much for joining us for the Gentleland Show.